Hi, I'm Valerie Ervin, Montgomery County Councilmember representing District 5. Please join me in a conversation with Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake coming up next.
Today, No Boundaries travels to Seibel's restaurant in Burtonsville. Known for its down-home cooking and tasty pies,
Good to see you.
Seibel's offered the perfect setting for Montgomery County Council member Valerie Ervin and Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake to meet. To start things off, Ms. Ervin inquired about some family history.
I know that you grew up in a family that had a father, Pete Rawlings, who was a very powerful member of the state legislature. And I want to just start with that. What was that like growing up in your household?
Never a dull moment. I grew up, my father was involved in civil rights and politics since before I was born. So I grew up understanding about community engagement and public service. And between my father and my mother, who's a pediatrician, who was very dedicated to making sure everyone, regardless of your income, had excellent health care. You know, I knew from a very early age that it would be important for me to use the skills and the experience that I had, the talents that I had, to make my community better.
You mentioned your mother, and she's got quite a story too. Historically in the city of Baltimore, she was the first African-American woman to graduate from
One of the first. Yeah,
one of the
she was
first.
one of the first. And she said it was very difficult. In the 60s at University of Maryland Medical School, we still have her ID card as, you know, as a memento, a reminder. And she said, you know, it was difficult for women in general, particularly for black women. She said that it was one of those things where the old boys club really didn't want to see women finish. So if they could get women to quit, they would, you know, it would be a notch on the belt, you know, if they could get a woman to give up.
Right. Well, what a family background. You have this amazing father, Pete Rawlings, and a mother who really had a lot of struggles of her own to get through medical school in the city of Baltimore. So this combination must have been really interesting in your household.
It was, you know, my father and I had a very close relationship. I was born on his birthday. He was always very, you know, my brother and my sister would say he always would take my side. I would beg to differ. But then I had my mom, and, you know, she's tough. And, you know, she's a pediatrician, very kind and compassionate. But when it came to us, you know, she was like, you know, you got to dig in. So I remember calling home from college, and I was just, you know, had exams, and you know how you have that self-doubt, like you're not sure if you're going to be able to do it. And I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I didn't think I would have enough time to study, and I was going to disappoint myself and my family. And I call home, I was like, you know, someone's got to come get me. I'm not going to make it. And I was talking to my mom, and I was waiting for that, it's going to be all right, baby. She said, imagine trying to study for your medical boards while you have morning sickness because you're sick and da-da-da-da. She said, this is nothing. You're in a nice dormitory. And I was like, is Daddy home?
Oh, yeah, right.
You know, you want
no
some
sympathy from
No,
mom.
she's like, you know, you pull yourself together and you study, and I was like, okay.
Right. Great lessons for you in your position now, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And so I also know you're a mom.
Yes.
And so before we started the taping, I heard you say all the things that you had to do this morning to get ready to get in your car and drive all the way across the state to get to Silver Spring. You have to still get your daughter ready for school in the morning.
I do, and she was very excited this morning. In her English class, they're doing a trial based on the book they just finished, The Tales of Despereaux. So she's getting ready to play her roles. So we had to, you know, not just a regular get yourself ready for school, but she had to get all of her costumes together. So I'm like, okay, all right, you know. But we made it. You know how it is, day by day.
Oh, absolutely. I love it that you are still a young mom. You have an incredible family history and legacy. And you are a first also. You were the youngest to be elected to your city council. You were only 25 years old. Tell us a little bit about how that all came to be.
You know, at the time, I didn't think it was a big deal because I'd been interested and involved in campaigns and politics since I was in 3rd or 4th grade. I was in student council from middle school straight through college. I worked with the Democratic State Central Committee with Young Democrats, so running for the city council seemed like a natural progression. And when you took a look at the other individuals who were running, it was about 10 or 15 candidates running for 3 spots. If you looked at my experience in government and politics and theirs, even though I was 25, I had so much more than, almost all of them except for the incumbent, because it was at that time 3-member districts.
So for all the young women who are watching this show and are thinking about running for office someday, and I hope that many of them do, I just want you to all look at Stephanie and see that she's got a child.
Yeah.
And you started very young at 25. It didn't deter you that you didn't have any experience. You just ran because
I trained for it. I studied government in college. I went straight from college to law school. I trained and prepared myself for service. And when I graduated from law school, while my other peers were taking the bar exam, I was knocking on doors.
Wow.
I took the bar later, a few months later, but I knew that I wanted to put my skills and talents to work to make my city better.
So let's move on to talk a little bit about what it's been like for you to be mayor.
Mm-hmm.
You got elected in a landslide election in 2011, I think with 97% of the vote or some
87 in general,
87,
yeah.
Huge percentage of the vote. That tells me a lot about the confidence that people in the city of Baltimore have in you, Stephanie. So talk to me about what it's been like for you to be the mayor.
Well, when I started, I remember very vividly, there was a lot of discord, a lot of drama with the previous administration, and we didn't know if the previous mayor was going to stay, if she was going to go, and I just remember getting a call that said, you need to get down to City Hall now. The mayor's about to make an announcement, and I found out that morning that in 30 days I would be mayor. And it was a whirlwind trying to put together a cabinet, put together a staff, and plan for this transition. And I remember that the day after I was sworn in, instead of putting all of these plans that we developed into work, we were responding to Snowmageddon.
Oh, yes.
So within 24 hours of being sworn in, I was in the snow emergency room preparing for the worst storm the city has had in over 100 years. So, it was a whirlwind, and then we had a tremendous budget deficit to deal with, and that called on all of those skills that I'd been developing all of that time in public service to be able to meet that challenge. So never a dull moment. We had the huge budget deficit, the Snowmageddon, earthquake, hurricane, tornado, flooding. But these situations call upon all of your strength and your experience to get over, and that's the part that I like. Solving problems and working toward a greater goal of growing our city, because I really believe Baltimore's best days are ahead of us.
If it wasn't for his doctor, he wouldn't be here.
If it weren't for Montgomery County Fire and Rescue, he wouldn't be here.
If it wasn't for the phone call, we wouldn't have been there.
If I didn't call, I don't know where we would be.
Montgomery County emergency responders are there when you need help at no cost to you. In an emergency, don't ever hesitate to call 911. If you live in Montgomery County, you will never get a bill or pay a dime.
So if you have an emergency, call us. We're there for you.
Supporting local food production is good for the environment, the community, your health, and to create a lasting commitment to preserving agricultural land. So consider buying your fruits and veggies at a Montgomery County farmers market. For a list of farmers markets or for more information on growing local, please contact the Montgomery County Department of Economic Development at www.montgomerycountymd.gov/farmersmarkets or call 301-590-2823.
As this No Boundaries from Seibel's restaurant in Burtonsville continues, Montgomery County Councilmember Valerie Ervin congratulates Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake on her city's recent win.
Well, first, let me start by saying congratulations on the Ravens' victory in the Super Bowl.
Thank you. It was
And
exciting.
Everybody's so thrilled, and I'm a Redskin fan, but I was right there cheering for the Ravens, just like everybody else in the state of Maryland was. How do you think the Ravens' win in the Super Bowl is going to help spur economic development?
Everyone loves a winner, and we were very, very excited for so many reasons. that we had a winning season, to get close so many years in a row, and then to win, and for it to be so emotional, being Ray Lewis's last game. It was great. And every part of our economic development strategy builds on those type of success. And what we have with the Orioles, with the Ravens, with our great attractions downtown, it's all about drawing people into the city, because what we know from our research is that when people get a chance to come to Baltimore, they fall in love with it and they'll come back. And that's something that helps us with restaurants, with hotels, with all of the things that keep our economy moving.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I've been reading about is what you're proposing to grow the city again. Mm-hmm. And I think these are bold initiatives that you're putting in place, so we're really excited to hear about that, because as Baltimore does well, the whole state of Maryland does well. So talk a little bit about how you're going to, what's your plan to grow by 10,000? I want to hear a little bit about that.
So we have a Grow Baltimore initiative. One of the things, when I became mayor, I started to think, how am I going to talk about my vision for Baltimore and what I know and what I feel about the future of Baltimore? And I thought about the fact that we were, at one point in our history, more than 50 years ago, we were over 900,000 people, and what would the city look like if we were to grow at a great pace again? And I started to say, well, if we have that goal to get up to where we know we can be, as far as eliminating vacant homes and putting homeowners back in those places, what would it look like and what would we have to do to get there? And that's how I developed my Grow Baltimore strategy, with an ambitious goal of growing Baltimore by 10,000 families over the next 10 years. And I've used that vision and that goal to inform all of the work that we're doing. And we engaged a financial firm to help us plan for that growth with our 10-year financial plan, and I have it for you. Ooh. It is called Change to Grow. We started with an assessment of where Baltimore is and where we project it to be in the future, and we saw that if we stayed on the same path with our costs growing far faster than our revenues, we would have, over the next 10 years, a $750 million budget deficit. And what were we going to do? What steps were we going to take to eliminate that structural deficit and make the investments that we needed to have a better future for Baltimore? And so we talk about that with pension changes, with health care changes, shrinking the size of government, and making strategic investment in our buildings and our infrastructure so we can prepare for the Baltimore that we want for the future.
I am very, very excited to see this. Thanks for sharing. We're probably going to be lifting some of your ideas out of here, but it's very unusual to have a woman CEO or mayor. It's okay for women to be legislators, which we are elected at pretty good numbers here in the state of Maryland, but to have a woman be the mayor, the CEO, is so interesting and important, I think, moving forward. And what you're laying out here for the city of Baltimore is what we're trying to lay out in Montgomery County, and I think in the entire region. So you are someone to watch in terms of putting forward an exciting plan. And I know that as the council president I was 2 years ago, we recognized we had a structural problem. Mm-hmm. And in order to get your hands around how to fix the problem, you got to be really bold and stand out on some things that people see as untouchables. Mm-hmm. And I know that you've had to deal with that around the issue of pensions. Mm-hmm. and those kinds of issues that really people, they feel uncomfortable about making those changes to fix the structural imbalance, which your city has, our county has. And so I think it's really exciting, and I appreciate you sharing this with us.
Thank you, and I know that you understand, like I do, that you cannot bury your head in the sand. It is our obligation to come up with solutions for it. And I hate to look around the country at cities that financial managers have been forced upon them, or other means of state control, because they find themselves in a situation where when they looked forward and saw what was coming, they couldn't put the pieces together to correct course.
Right.
And I knew that Baltimore deserves better.
Baltimore is going to be a national model. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the growth in the city. I love to go to Baltimore. I have 2 sons. I don't want to say their ages because that would make me be old. But whenever they come to visit,
Really? How old are they?
I have a 31-year-old,
No, you don't.
I do, and a 25-year-old. And whenever they're together in the same city, they always go to Baltimore for the
Well, thank you very
nightlife.
much, yeah.
A lot of their friends live in Baltimore, and they love Baltimore. And so I visit a lot. And so what I'm seeing are these neighborhoods just like coming alive in the city.
Well, one thing we knew, and we talk about it in the 10-year financial plan, is Baltimore needs to be more competitive. You know, we have these great neighborhoods. We have vibrant, the sports teams. We have wonderful parks. We have great neighbors. We have wonderful restaurants. But we have to be more competitive when it comes to taxes. And we're really taking a page out of your book when we look at how we can be more competitive. We're looking at sanitation fee. I know that's not, sexy, but when other counties charge separately for sanitation, and we have it as a part of our property tax, the property tax isn't even. So we're taking a look at things that other counties charge separately. So when you're at the closing at the table for closing for your house, you don't compare, the trash fee or this, that. You're looking property tax to property tax, and we want to be more competitive, as well as be able to collect fees for service for some institutions or entities that may not pay property tax. We can collect on those things. So we're working to be more competitive to get more people to come to move into the city, and we're seeing it work. Our downtown neighborhood is one of the fastest growing neighborhood when it comes to population. Our Vacancy to Value initiative that is dealing with the blight that we've had in the city is we've sold 5 times as many homes as under the previous administration with our Vacancy to Value. We streamlined the process for when you see a city-owned property that you want to purchase. We've cut the transaction time by more than 25%, making it easier, predictable. We created incentives, so if you want to buy a formerly vacant home, you qualify for a $10,000 home ownership incentive. That can be layered with, say if you work for Johns Hopkins, you can get a bonus for live where you work, so that can go towards your closing costs. We have that Wells Fargo settlement, that can go as well. So people can get almost up to $40,000 at the table to help toward purchasing a home. That makes a difference.
If anybody's listening, don't leave the county right now.
Can I tell you one story? We have a firefighter, a handsome young gentleman who works for you, but but I don't consider it competition in the sense that as we grow, we all grow.
Absolutely.
And we could have lost him to Philadelphia or to another jurisdiction, but he stayed in Maryland. He wanted to live in Montgomery County, but that workforce housing wasn't there, and he found a place.
Oh, yes.
But so now he can work where he wants, which is Montgomery County, and live somewhere we can have the quality of life that he wants. So we're working together.
No, I love it. That's why the show is called No Boundaries,
Yeah.
because as we grow in the region, all these things that are happening in your city do have impact, and in a good way,
It does.
on the residents of Montgomery County.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
In this final segment, Montgomery County Councilmember Valerie Ervin and Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake pick up where they left off, discussing an issue about which they are passionate: education.
So Stephanie, I know that education in the city of Baltimore is one of your top priorities. And I want to talk about why that is and all the work that you're doing in the city on this very, very important topic.
I was raised to value education. My dad grew up in the projects. My mom grew up one of 9, and her parents stressed education. My father always believed that it was an equalizer. So we always focused. I said my dad would never buy us designer jeans, but if there was a designer encyclopedia set, we would have had it first in the block, because that's what he valued.
Yeah.
And so the work that we're doing, strengthening our schools, I really, out of all of the things I do, it makes me the most proud as far as my father's legacy to be able to do the work I do with education, because he was such a strong advocate for school reform and the city-state takeover that was very controversial at the time that he proposed it he worked on it, and proposed it in the 90s. But now when we see enrollment is going up, test scores are going up, graduation rates are going up, dropout rates are coming down, that's one of the things I wish that he could see, because at the time he didn't have any children in the school system, any grandchildren, but he worked like a dog because he knew what it would mean for the city. So I'm very proud, and I'm also very proud that we're close, very close. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm going to knock on wood and cross my fingers on getting our school construction passed in the legislature. So we'll be able to have great school buildings as well, facilities, modern facilities that'll keep families in Baltimore.
I think for people who are listening that don't understand the legacy of your father or the struggles in the city of Baltimore, we're always kind of competing for those state dollars. And what you just laid out here is so important for us to understand what's been happening in the city of Baltimore over many, many decades, and how now we're seeing these gaps beginning to close. And so education means a lot to me too. I mean, I serve as the council's education chair. I used to be on the board of education, and I fight all the time to close these achievement gaps. And in Montgomery County, African American students are on the bottom. The gap is widening. So when I hear that these things are possible in Baltimore, I get so encouraged. I'm really excited and happy about what you're doing there. And then I can see where this money is so needed for the facilities, and I'm so glad that you're here to talk to us about why this legacy of your father is now resting on your shoulders. It's quite a story.
Well, my suggestion to you, because I know how committed you are on that achievement gap, is to hold the schools accountable for that as well. I mean, schools will do, when we focus on test scores being it, they will teach to the test, whether that's good or bad, or make sure the kids are able to achieve on that test. But if you make closing that achievement gap a condition of, on the score sheet, they'll figure out ways to close that achievement gap as well. But we have to, just like you do in your role with education, put it on the table and hold people accountable.
I hope that the superintendent's listening, because we just had a conversation with him about this very same topic.
I knew you were on it.
We are on top of it, and to hear how personal this is to you as the mayor, and the legacy that your father leaves for you, and you're just like being held up by that, it's so exciting, and I'm glad you shared that with us.
Thank you.
Which brings me to my next point, and that is your leadership on marriage equality, and also the DREAM Act, and how your city is also a city of immigrants.
It is.
So I want to talk to you. The first person I saw do a video on marriage equality was you.
Just as a straight couple's commitment to family is legally recognized, so too should a gay couple's commitment be recognized by our state government.
You came out so early in support of marriage equality. Why is that?
When people ask me that, I always say, well, why not? I just cannot imagine why we would not want equality for all of our residents. And when I think about the fact, with the marriage equality and with the DREAM Act, if you have benefited from the gay, lesbian, bisexual community, whether it's, your choir director or your child's dance teacher or your lawyer or your child's teacher, and unless you're closing your eyes, if you have benefited, why would you not want for those people who have helped you to have everything that you're able to enjoy? It's the same thing for the DREAM Act. We benefit from the businesses that the new Americans are bringing to the country, from the workforce, that they are bringing, willing to do jobs, that nobody wants to say that so many don't want to do.
That's right.
They love to have the doors of opportunity open for them. We can't then turn our backs on them. We should want them to be able to achieve and want and achieve the same things that we want for our kids. So for me, it was why not?
Yes.
Why not do these things? So it was, for me, it was about wanting for the entire community what I want for my own family, which is equality. When I was coming up, gender equality wasn't as big as racial equality, or for lesbians and gays, that wasn't as big an issue, but for us it was the racial thing that was big. But my parents made sure that if I was describing someone, if I talked about the color of their skin first, they would stop me. Is that what you see first? You know, because it was, you know, we're people. They made me think about that. And that's the same way it is now as we're talking about, you know, equality for all based on, you know, not just your race or your gender, but also your sexual identity. You know, is that how you see people? Is this how you are separating people? And, you know, we have to figure out where we want the country to be.
Yes. Well, I want to move on to the city that you grew up in, the city that you claim as your own, and that they embrace you in the city of Baltimore as one of Baltimore's own. So what's it like now as mayor? You grew up there, you still have lots of friends in the community. And
growing up in Baltimore, and you know, I went away for college, came back, it's just natural. You know, people that grew up with me, you know, that went to middle school, when they saw me in student government. So the fact that I'm mayor isn't surprising to them. They knew, you know, while some kids were getting into, you know, things that they probably shouldn't, that I wasn't, because I knew that I was, you know, that I was headed to a life that, you know, that just didn't fit.
Right.
So, you know, luckily there are enough people who I've grown up with that are still in Baltimore that you know, I can turn it off sometimes and just be Stephanie and not, you know, worry about whether or not they have a parking ticket or they're mad about their taxes or things like that.
Well, that's nice. I know that you are, in a lot of people's minds, a leader for the future.
Thank you.
In Maryland, and maybe even bigger than that. And I know that you recently received a distinction that I want you to talk about a little bit from the Democratic National Committee. You've been appointed the secretary. That is huge. And I want you to talk a little bit about that for yourself, but also for the future of Maryland and how that sort of elevates the state.
I was extremely excited, surprised, and humbled to get the call from the leadership of the DNC that the president and the chair were interested in reshaping the Democratic Party nationally. They told me that they wanted the leadership of the Democratic Party to reflect the future of the Democratic Party and what they wanted for the country, and they were looking for next generation leaders, and they considered me one of them. And I was speechless in the sense that, you know, I was raised to focus on doing the work.
Right.
You know, if you got recognition for it, that was gravy, that was icing, but that's not why you do the work. It's just it is to do the best that you can every day. So to think that the president noticed the work that we've been doing was gratifying and humbling, and I've been excited. You know, there are very few women mayors, 2 of cities over 500,000 people, and hopefully we'll have more in the ranks. But you know, to be one of a handful and to be able to move up in national leadership, I'm honored. And when I spoke to the executives of the DNC, I said I want to bring more along. You know, I want to speak to young women, get them interested in public service. I want to be able to speak to young minorities, get them interested in public service, make sure that people know that this is a big tent and there's room for everyone and their voices matter.
I'm so proud of you, Stephanie, and I think there's a tremendous sense of pride across the state of Maryland. You are someone that we look to for leadership, and for all the women who are watching, you are the role model that we have been looking for a long time.
And you,
so, well,
and
I really appreciate that. So your story is just so amazing. So thanks for sharing.
It is my pleasure to be here with a fellow woman in public service, and I appreciate what you do. And you are that same role model for so many in this county and throughout the state as well. So I'm honored and proud to be here with you.
Thank you, Stephanie.